happened to me over the course of the time I was gone, particularly over Labor Day weekend, which caused me to think this morning that I'm not going to preach a sermon. Instead, I'm going to deviate from the pattern this morning and tell a story. So don't worry, this isn't always what I'm going to do. I'm sure next week, well, it'll be the week after because next week is missions conference, but we'll be right back to Bible and verse and text the usual way. But something happened to me over the course of the Labor Day weekend that I learned a lot from, and have a lot of lessons that I learned that God showed me, or that reinforced in my life that I wanted to share with you instead. It impacted me so much that I just wanted to share with you. So bear with me as we do something a little different this morning. Over the Labor Day weekend, as many of you know, we are campers, and so we went camping over the Labor Day weekend. And I worked pretty late the night before, and so we got up in the morning as early as we could, and we hooked up the camper, and we packed up our clothes and our belongings, and we were headed down the road right around 10:30ish. If I remember right, we might have stopped for some groceries as well on the way, but we were making relatively good time heading down the road. Our destination was Erie, PA. Girard, PA in particular. It's beyond Erie, headed towards Ohio. It's a good ways away, but it's close enough to Erie that it's still considered part of Erie. We have family there that we camp with on a regular basis. So we were heading that way. And about halfway through, not quite halfway, but near that, is the Eden Angola truck stop. We all know about that truck stop on 90, right? We're driving past there. Things are going along fine. I decided that I wanted to make a restroom break. And so I went ahead and pulled in. And I was thinking as I exited the truck, you know, my coffee cup is empty. I think I'm going to grab my wallet. I reached into the center console and pulled out my wallet. It says, I think I'm going to grab my wallet. Maybe I'll get a cup of coffee while I'm in there, you know, and top off because I got a little bit of driving left to do. And so I went in and used the restroom and came back out and saw that the line for McDonald's was here to, you know, clear back to Kingdom Come. And so I was like, you know what, I don't feel like standing in that line. I'm just going to say forget it and I'll grab some coffee when we get back. So I just flushed the idea out, headed back to the truck, jumped in, and we all got on our way. We continued to make good time, getting back to Erie, and once we were there, we set up the camper, and that went smoothly as well. And once we were all settled in, the kids started talking about being hungry. I was a little bit hungry, and so we called in an order to Little Caesars Pizza, which is in Girard, and it's Danny and Hannah both like, especially Danny, but Hannah as well. They like Little Caesars. I called in the order. I know they have hot and readies, but they don't usually seem to have plain cheese as ready as cheese and pepperoni. I want a plain cheese, so I called in an order, and I headed down. I hopped in the truck, headed into town, and pulled into the plaza where Little Caesars was, and went to get out and get the pizza. And I reached into the center console to pull out my wallet. It wasn't there. And I reached into my pants pockets to get my wallet. It wasn't there. I looked to the door next to me. There's like some holders in the door. I looked over there. Wallet wasn't there. And then, in a terrible flash of reality, I realized just what had happened. I remembered vividly taking my keys and my wallet and setting them on a shelf next to me while I was in the bathroom at Eden Angola, and I could vividly remember getting my keys and walking out, but I don't really remember getting my wallet and walking out. And so in that moment, I was pretty sure, I was starting to click, pretty sure that I had walked out of the bathroom in Eden Angola without my wallet, and I didn't really notice it because my plan was to stop for McDonald's, but I didn't stop. And so I just kept walking right out. It didn't even occur to me. If I had stopped there, I would have reached my wallet and realized I didn't have it. So that was going off in my mind. In that moment, my heart kind of sank, and I realized that my wallet was most likely sitting in a truck stop that was by now 100 miles away, and it had been sitting there 4 hours already. So I decided to call back to Holly and the kids at the camper and see if I left it there. You know, who knows? Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm just missing things. So I called and asked them to check. They checked. It wasn't there. I wasn't surprised. By now, I was pretty sure what had happened. So I looked up Eden Angola truck stop on the internet, brought up their Google page, looked to see if they had a number. They had a number. Great. So I dialed the number in. It was a fax number. Couldn't get a hold of anybody. Well, I was like, well, wait a minute, there's a McDonald's there. Googled the McDonald's, in Eden, Angola. I made sure it was a truck stop one, called the number. It was a fax number. It was the same number as the truck stop, actually, and so I couldn't get a hold of anybody there. Couldn't call to check. So my thinking was, hey, I'll head back to the camper, take one last look, and search everything, search a truck, and let's pray for a miracle. But before I left, I went into the Little Caesars and asked if they took Apple Pay, because my main payment form is on my phone in Apple Pay, and a lot of places you can do that now with the credit card machine. So I asked if they took Apple Pay, which they did. And so I asked them to bring out my order, and they brought it out, and it was wrong. It was the wrong order. They're like, I'm sorry, sir, we seem to have misunderstood you. Would you like to wait 10 minutes and we'll cook you a new pizza? And I was like, no, just give me this pizza, I'll pay for it. And I paid and kind of sneered at him and stormed out. I don't got time to be standing here waiting for you to fix this, that kind of thing. And then I hopped in the truck and headed back to the campsite. And in the process, I exited the plaza in the wrong place. It was only a right-hand turn. I needed to go left, so I went to the right, and I was looking immediately for a turnaround place, where I could stop, turn the truck around, get headed the right direction. I found one pretty quick. So I stopped and put my signal on and waited for the oncoming traffic to pass. And as they were going by, I'm saying to myself, I'm frustrated by this point and irritated. Come on, let's go. I got places to be, as though these people could hear anything that I was saying. Whenever I do that, and Holly's in the car, she's like, they can't hear you. But I was doing that, and the cars were going by. And then one of the last cars in the lineup, as they were coming along, started to slow down and slow down and slow down and slow down. And I was saying to myself, let's go, even louder, as though, again, she could hear me. But this car continued to slow down and then stopped right in front of me in the middle of the road. And when I looked inside, I saw a nice lady in there going, go on, waving me on by to go in front of her, Come on through, it's okay, I'll let you go. And in that moment, I pretty much completely lost my sanctification. I was just, what's wrong with you, learn to drive, you can't stop in the middle of the road. If you'd just gone by like everyone else, I could have already been turned around by now, that kind of thing. And she just kept waving, because she couldn't hear anything that I was saying. So I just tore in there and spun around and got headed back the other way, speeding and fuming and all that kind of stuff that I was doing, because I was just out of it. And right in that moment is when the still small voice of God's Spirit started to break through and speak to me. And this is what I heard. Who lost the wallet, Dan? Who created the mess that you're in? I just got to thinking about myself, thinking about that. I was like, that was me. I'm the one who lost this wallet. And then the next thing I heard was, well, why are you yelling at that lady? Why are you yelling at those people at Little Caesars, They didn't lose your wallet. Why are you taking it on them for, And so in that moment, I just stopped. I said, I'm sorry, this whole mess is my fault, Lord. From start to finish, I messed this up. I should have been more careful. I should have been more cautious. I'm the one who lost my wallet. Can you please have mercy on me and help me figure this mess out? Well, by then I'm starting to cool off and get things under control, calm down, and approach it with a clear head. So I drive home the rest of the way. And that brings me to the first lesson. I have a couple more lessons I want to give you, but this is the first lesson that I learned in this experience. Or maybe it's something I needed to be reinforced in, I don't know. But the lesson is this, is that misdirected anger is always toxic, it's always dangerous, and it's always a path to sin. And I'll say it again, misdirected anger is always toxic, it's always dangerous, and it's always a path to sin. I had a very legitimate reason to be upset, but I was taking out my frustration on innocent people who had nothing to do with what I did, instead of taking it out on the person who committed the problem. That was me. I was the one who did it, not them. I'm taking out all my frustration on them. Yeah, it's legitimate to be upset, but point the blame where it goes. It was on me. When we do this, it always compounds the problem, and it always alienates us from friends and family and the people that God has called us to reach when we do that. And just think about yourself. This is something I've done over the years, and I think you can all identify with it. You ever have a bad day? You come home, you start taking it out on your wife, your kids, your dog, whatever. Just take it out on everybody. That's the kind of thing you do. When we do that, we are taking out our legitimate grievances. We're taking legitimate things. There may be a very real reason to be upset when we come home, a real reason to have a bad day, but we're punishing innocent people for things that other people did. And it's really a very cowardly act if you think about it. We do it because we're too proud or too fearful to hold the true offender accountable. And my point here is if your boss is a jerk and you have a bad day at work, then confront him, hold him accountable. Don't take it on your wife, your kids, your family, your friends. And if you messed up, take responsibility for your actions. Don't take it out on your wife, your kids, your friends, your family. Does that make sense? Misdirected anger is always toxic. I caught myself doing it, and it was a problem. So I headed back to the camper and gave everything one last search, just to be sure. And guess what? Didn't find the wallet. I knew I wouldn't. And around that time, Holly's like, "Did you find your wallet yet?" I'm like, "No, but I'm pretty sure I know where it is." She says, "Where is it?" I said, "It's in Eden, Angola." She was like, "Oh," and I know, I'm near certain it's there, and I know just what happened. And so we had two choices in that moment. She asked, "Did you call him?" I says, "I've already tried to call him. All I get is a fax number." So I had two choices. I either had to say, "You know what, the wallet's a goner, start canceling my cards now," or drive clear back to Eden, Angola, and hope for the best. And weighing it a little bit, I said, "You know what, I think I'm going to go ahead and drive back to Eden, Angola and see what happens." So I opted for the latter. I headed back to Eden, Angola. And by this time, I'm really calming down. I've taken responsibility. I'm getting into a better place. And so it was an hour and a half drive, clear back the opposite direction to go back to Eden, Angola. And it was a relaxing drive. It was a peaceful drive. I was listening to music. I was listening to messages and other things that I like to do in the car. And I also had time during that to take stock of the loss, which, as I was thinking about it, really wasn't that big a deal. I lost my bank card and the church credit card and my State Farm card, which is my main purchasing card. And I lost my driver's license and my VA card. And so that's pretty much it. I could easily cancel those cards. I can easily get back my driver's license and VA card. It's not like the world's going to end if I can't find this wallet. The sun will still come up in the morning. It's all going to be okay. This isn't worth biting people's heads off over or getting overly anxious about. I had time to just process through that as we were going along. It's a tough loss. I mean, the State Farm card was going to be tough because I don't know if you guys have your main card where all your subscriptions go through. Everything that automatic, all that has to change. I'm going to have to cancel all those and put new card info in. So I don't want to have to do that. But such is life. Small price to pay for the mistake I made. It'll be okay. Well, I got back to Eden, Angola around 6 hours after I left the wallet there. And the first thing I did was walk into the bathroom and check and see if it happened to be where I left it. Why not? There are some lessons that my father taught me that stick with me, and one of them is check the obvious. Did your dad ever tell you to check the obvious? With him, it was always in the context of something mechanical. If the lawnmower's not starting, check the gas tank and make sure there's no gas in it before you start tearing it apart, that kind of thing. Check the obvious stuff first, and then work your way back. So that's what I did. I mean, honestly, it was my dad's voice going in my head. Check the obvious first. So I went in the bathroom to see if it was there. Wasn't there. Wasn't surprised to see that. That would have been 6 hours in a public place. So then I decided to check the service desk, but guess what? It was 6:30 by that point. The service desk was closed. There was no employees there. There was no janitorial staff there. There was no one. So I went to the gift shop, and I told the lady at the gift shop what had happened. She says, "Well, the lost and found for the entire TA truck stop is at McDonald's, and so you can go over there, and if it was turned in, they're the ones that have it." I said, "Great." So I went over to McDonald's and stood in the eternal line. The line was worse this time than it was before, and so I stood there and waited patiently in line until it came up. And when I got there, the attendant says, "Can I take your order?" And I says, "I'd like to speak to the manager. I believe I've left my wallet here, and I heard there's a lost and found." She said, "Yeah, absolutely." And she called the manager over. And I told him what happened, and he went back into the office and came back out and said, "Sorry, sir, there's no wallet here." So he said, "Well, and there's two things I can tell you. One, let me take your number down, and if it does turn up, we can call you." And he proceeded to pull a pen out and write on a receipt my number, and the pen wouldn't write. No ink's coming out. And he's like, "Well, it's okay. I'll just bear down and I'll be able to see the imprint." And he even wrote down the right number in the imprint, and I was like, I'm never going to be getting a call back from this guy. But he also said, "You know what? The Sunoco station's on both sides of the truck stop. have lost and founds as well. And so why don't you go check them out? You never know. So they might have picked it up and dropped it off there. I said, great. So I went to the Sunoco's. The first Sunoco I went to, I said, hey, did anyone turn in a wallet? As a matter of fact, they did, sir. I said, great. And he pulled out a wallet and said, is this your wallet? Nope, it wasn't my wallet. I wanted it so bad, but it wasn't my wallet. Well, then I went to the second Sunoco, and they said, no, we have nothing here. But tell you what, we'll call the other Sunoco and see if they have a wallet. I said, don't bother. I've already been there. There's no wallets. So by this time, I realized that the wallet was a goner. And I called Holly and told her, yeah, the wallet's gone. It's not here. And so I'm going to go ahead and cancel my cards and head for home. And Holly on the other side says, do you have any gas in your truck? And I looked in the truck and I was almost on empty. She says, well, you might want to put gas in your truck before you cancel all your cards. Wise woman. I would have been stranded. When you're going through stuff, you don't think straight, you miss stuff. And so I said, I thanked her for that. I did exactly that. I used Apple Pay to prepaid and topped off my truck. And then I started the process of canceling cards. I called Northwest Bank, which is where my bank account and the church credit card is through, and I called them and canceled them right there. It was a very easy thing to do. They canceled the cards, and they were going to send me new ones, and that's all done. And regarding driver's license, just in case you were wondering, you lose your driver's license, there's a process you can go through to get another one, but you have one shot to print out the temporary replacement until the new one comes. And so I wasn't near a computer, so I just said, you know what, I'm going to leave this go, and I'll deal with it when I get back from my trip. And regarding the VA, I needed my driver's license to be able to get my VA ID returned. So I was like, well, I'll have to wait till we get back. So I moved on to the credit card that I didn't want to deal with, which was the State Farm card. That's the one I do all my purchasing through. And I got looking at it, and I realized that on the app, all I had to do is push a little button, and I could lock it right then and there. And by locking it, it wouldn't allow any new purchases to be done, but all of the subscriptions and pending transactions, which everything was clear, I checked it, were all fine. That would go through. And I was like, well, this is great. I can just leave this alone. I can go back, join Holly and the kids, and we'll deal with this when I get back from the trip. And hey, who knows? Maybe a miracle will occur. You just never know what will happen. And I moved on about the business. I started the truck, got ready to pull out and head back and say, oh, well, it is what it is. And I looked over to my right, and I saw a pen and some Post-its. And I said, you know what? I think what I'm going to do, this is probably a waste of time, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to write my name and my number down on this Post-it, because the other guy couldn't write it on his pen. With his pen and paper, it was a mess. I'm going to write my name and number down, walk back into McDonald's, and give it to the guy, just in case a miracle occurs and it shows up. Why not? What'll it hurt? I walked back into McDonald's, and I went up to the desk again, and I said, I'd like to speak to the manager. And a different manager came up this time. And he says, can I help you? I says, well, I lost my wallet. I proceeded to tell him I lost my wallet, and I wanted to give you this number, but all he heard was lost wallet. He says, oh, let me check the lost and found. I was like, wait, I've already done that. Too late. He walked back. And he walked back into the office where the other manager walked. I was sitting there thinking to myself, well, he's going to walk back there and find it's not there. I can tell you that. Well, he walked out, sure enough, and it wasn't there. But he didn't come back. He went around a little bit further to the back into a different room. And then he walked out holding a wallet in his hand. And he opened it up and looked at me and looked at the wallet, slapped it down in front of me and says, is this your wallet? And here it is. Right here. I could not believe my eyes. I was like, you're kidding me, and I could, how did I miss it before? Well, apparently the other manager just didn't know that they took things like wallets and secured them a little bit more carefully than they did the average things from the lost and found. So I got my wallet back. And the only thing that was different about my wallet is that my driver's license was in the photo ID section. They had pulled it out, shoved it in there so that he could open it up and look and make sure that he was giving the wallet back to the right person. The cash that was in it was there, the cards, everything was untouched. It was completely unmessed with, and I couldn't believe it. So that was an interesting experience that tied up like half a day. And I already told you the first lesson that I learned from it. But there was a couple more that ruminated in my mind as I was driving back from this experience. And so here they are now, okay? The second lesson that I learned from that experience is that the people of the world are a lot better than we give them credit for. All right? I was brought up in evangelical Christian culture, and there was always this sense in which the world was described full of barbaric, vile people that were just completely lost and had no moral compass whatsoever, and we need to get them Jesus to save them from themselves, and that kind of thing. They were just described in the most horrible way. But the more I get around these people, the more I find that just isn't the case at all. My wallet was left in a public restroom in one of the most trafficked truck stops, on this side of the state. People were going in and out, walking right past it. I mean, hundreds of people, races, religions, creeds, whatever, cultured, uncultured, they all walked right past it and saw it, left it. Finally, someone, possibly a janitor, maybe it was someone else, who realized the wallet was left, took it and turned it in to Lost and Found so that I could get my property back. And the only thing that was done with the wallet was that they looked for an ID card and put it somewhere visible to ensure that it got to me and not to someone else by mistake. They did that on their own. People in the world, they need Jesus just as much as we do, but they are more desirous to know the truth and to do what's right than we give them credit for. And they are more receptive to the truth than we give them credit for sometimes. And just keep that in mind as we're reaching out and ministering to them. We're not talking to someone who hates truth and hates righteousness. They care about these things, they just don't necessarily know how to get there. And our job is to help them. And when given the opportunity to do what's right, oftentimes they will do the right thing. It's encouraging to know. That's my first lesson. Second lesson, or this is actually lesson 3, not lesson 2. Lesson 3 is don't admit defeat too soon. Give God some room to work a situation out. When I realized that my wallet was in Eden, Angola, the first thing I thought was that it's a goner. I'm never going to see it again. It's over. And at one point, I had shared earlier, the thought was, do I drive clear? I can't call them. Do I drive clear back to Eden, Angola? Or do I just tap out now and admit defeat? Well, I opted for the latter because by now I'm already remembering. I've learned this enough times in my life. Give a little space for God to work things out. You never know. He might sort it out. And even when I got down there, so that's why I drove out in the first place, but even when I got down there and I didn't find it, when it occurred to me there was one more thing I could possibly do to keep the door open, I did it. And my point here is that when you're facing a situation that's difficult like this, give God the room to work it out. Don't just tap out. Don't just assume defeat. Don't just say, why bother? Everything always is all messed up anyway. Maybe it's going to work out, maybe it's not, but give God the room to sort it out. You never know what might happen. In my case, I was just about to drive away, and there was one more thing I could do, and that one last thing ended up being pay dirt for me, jackpot. Couldn't believe it. But actually I can believe it, because God often does that. The fourth lesson. We're going to mess up. We're human. And by the way, we pastors put our pants on one leg at a time as well. We are just as human as you are, and I just got done sharing that with you. So if you mess up, don't be surprised. You're going to mess up more and more as time goes on. It's going to happen. It's going to be a part of your life clear till you go home. But if you're at least able to learn from it quicker and get back on track sooner, you're making progress. You know what I'm saying? I can think back to a few years ago when things would happen to me and weren't working out right. I can remember one time when we were moving one time. I went to go pick up a U-Haul, and I had trouble getting the truck picked up. Big shocker, U-Haul doesn't have a real reputation anymore. But then I was late getting to where I needed to be, and then I got the truck stuck in the snow. And I can just remember absolutely losing it, going ballistic. And I was so mad, I saw a rock. And I was like, that's it. Ah! And I went to kick it, and I missed the rock. And I was standing on ice, and my feet just went out from under me, and just boom, right on the ground. No one saw that except for God. No, I'm telling you. My point here is that in years past, I would just lose it and lose my mind and do punch things, kick things. I would lose my sanctification, but it would last longer. I lost my sanctification here, and I started to lose it. The difference is that I heard the voice of God sooner, and I got back on track a little bit sooner. I'm still sorry for what I said and did, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, well, at least I recognized my mess up sooner and got back on track. And my point here is, if you blew it, you're going to blow it, but if you're at least able to catch it and get yourself corrected sooner, you're still headed in the right direction. Does that make sense? God understands. He knew all this stuff was going to happen when he sent Jesus to save you. But if you're at least tracking in the right direction, this is a good thing. And lastly, this is the last lesson I have for you today. Events like this are frustrating. They are hard. They're not fun in the moment. But they teach us things. And they give us stories to tell. You understand what I'm saying? If we didn't have things like this happen from time to time, we wouldn't learn these lessons. We wouldn't have them reinforced in our life. And we wouldn't have stories like this to share with our friends and family to be able to witness and tell about the goodness of God. So have you had some frustrating things happen in your life lately? They're not fun in the moment, but it is entirely possible that you're going to be able to look back and you're going to be able to say, I'm glad this happened to me because I learned this lesson from it. I'm better for it because this happened. Does that make sense? With that said, these are the lessons that I learned. And it was an unpleasant experience, and I'm already glad that it happened. And I'm thankful that I was able to get my wallet back. But even if I hadn't gotten my wallet back, I still would have been thankful that it happened because it brought some sobering things into my life. And I'm glad that it happened just the way that it did. So